Hi everyone, today I'd like to introduce you to a film debate which has waged for years, the Auteur Theory. The best way for me to introduce it is like this. What do you personally consider to be a great film? Quickly consider some of your favourite films. Can you quantify why they are good? Do you think it's all about story, in which case the writing is probably the most important step? Or is it the director and how their masterful skill with film translates words to screen? Or maybe you acknowledge that film is actually a collaborative process involving hundreds of different people. Auteur Theory puts the emphasis on the director, saying that master directors are able to make a good film out of a bad script. So today we're going to be putting that principle to the test. Now the first thing I want to point out is this isn't technically a theory. It was misinterpreted as Auteur Theory by Andrew Saris as he kind of developed the work that had already been started by someone else. It was originally introduced as auteur policy when it was first written about by French New Wave director François Truffaut. In post-World War II France, a group of cinephiles featuring such legendary directors as Jean-Luc Godard and of course Truffaut noticed that so much of the cinema being produced in France was wooden and lacking identity. Films like these were more interested in preserving classical texts and bringing them to the big screen as safely and as unspoilt as possible.
De liqueur grisante, et elle se serait pendue.
It was made all the more obvious when they compared these films to certain Hollywood directors such as Hitchcock and Orson Welles, who they felt were able to put their own mark on their films in much the same way that great art can be immediately recognizable as a Monet or a Van Gogh. The group would study film night and day, trying to ascertain how cinema could be more personal, more daring, and this culminated in an article called A Certain Tendency of French Cinema, written by François Truffaut. This was essentially a call to arm to filmmakers, encouraging them to steer away from cinema du papa, or dad cinema, where everything was safe, unexciting, not personal. And they actually encouraged them to try and see their use of the camera exactly the same as a painter uses a brush. Filmmakers should be daring and unique. He argued that a great director could transcend the confines of a script and imprint their own identity, irrespective of the story. Perhaps this is also why so much revolutionary French New Wave cinema relied on improvisation rather than script. Directors who are able to speak visually like this could be defined as an auteur, literally an author, no different to the author of a book. The policy that he put forward identified two key areas that could be used to distinguish between a mere technical director and an auteur. Firstly, he identified the film's aesthetic, mise-en-scene and mise-en-shot, as key to identifying the work of an auteur. This is the visual style of the film, including the lighting, the set design, the costume, and equally, how the camera shoots them. An auteur will present their own consistent interpretation of the world in their visual style. I've made a separate video all about mise-en-scene, which I'll make a link to at the end of this video. So let's put this idea of consistent visual style to the test. A director that I admire, who almost certainly would be defined by anyone as an auteur, is David Fincher. So what then does a Fincher movie look like? The first thing I recognize is his color palette. Often very muted, you might even say dreary, creating a slight melancholy, heavy feeling. It's especially obvious in man-made industrial or commercial settings such as this. But more importantly than the mise-en-scene is the mise-en-shot, the way he shoots a scene. His style is incredibly deliberate. Unlike some filmmakers who prefer the fluidity of shooting film from the shoulder like Alfonso Cuarón, Fincher favors precise, static shots and subtle movements that are almost invisible. In other words, he's very prescriptive with what he wants the audience to look at in a shot and uses his actors to steer our attention like this.
Where'd you get it?
It's a Christmas gift from my mother 2 years ago.
That's very sweet. So tell me something, Arthur. You don't remember anyone you might have had a conversation with regarding the Zodiac?
So it seems Fincher certainly passes the first test put forward by Truffaut. What about the second test? Truffaut said that auteurs should also have a consistent theme to their work, something that reflects their life, their personality in the films that they choose to make. Let's look at Christopher Nolan for this one. Across all of his films, there is a consistent play with ideas of family and time. You could almost say his various films, whether they're war films, sci-fi, or action, are all part of the same body of work that reflects these themes. So underneath the science and narrative about human extinction, Interstellar is really about family and love transcending space and time. In Dunkirk, it's the father-son narrative arc on the boat that provides the biggest emotional punch in terms of the various sacrifices made by the soldiers and sailors of the conflict. Underneath it all, it's about family and love. Likewise, Nolan's fascination with time has been the backbone of Memento, which plays out in reverse narrative, and perhaps most explicitly in the yo-yo narrative of Tenet, which goes backwards and forwards in time. We see this too in Inception and Interstellar again. Nolan is clearly interested in the whole concept of time.
I think all the films I've made, I like to think that they're connected in certain ways, but that they're also different from each other. That's as best as I can put it. And so I'd like to continue working along those lines.
Okay, so it seems pretty straightforward so far. To be an auteur, you need to have a consistent aesthetic and explore a specific theme across your body of work. So where does the debate come in? Well, as I mentioned earlier, and as you'll be fully aware if you've ever stayed at the end of a film to watch all of the credits, films are actually a truly collaborative process that involve hundreds of people. Consider who is actually responsible for the aesthetic. Most films have a separate art director, and although they'll work under the direction of the director, they are the ones who will be doing the actual visualizing. And what about the actors who interpret their lines and can literally be the making or breaking of a film? The same goes for the score that gives the soul to a film. Can such an important aspect of film be overlooked when Steven Spielberg himself attributed the success of Jaws to the iconic score by John Williams? Apparently in early screenings of the film, without the score, audiences actually laughed at the deadly shark. Then again, you could say the composers are simply working under the guidance of the director. Here's Christopher Nolan again explaining what he asked of Hans Zimmer for the music of Dunkirk and how it was actually in mind while he wrote the film.
It actually is derived from a recording I made of a watch they own that I had a particularly insistent ticking. And I sent it to Hans Zimmer, who's done the music, and said, can you start building rhythmic tracks out of this? Because the script was written according to certain musical principles to do with approaches to music that can give you a sense of continuing momentum. Despite these criticisms, auteur theory is a concept that lives on today and is now really kind of used as a marketing tool by film companies. Consider films that are marketed for their director rather than their stars. This can surely be a way to maximize box office takings. And I think this actually reveals the reason auteurship does survive. It's because there are still directors out there who are unmistakable. Look at these clips. Could they be the work of anyone but Wes Anderson? When you look at these clips, are you not confident you could point out a Tim Burton film from the crowd? Finally, I would personally argue that the more involvement that a director has with every stage of production, like Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino, the more they can claim the title of auteur. Think about it, they say a film is written 3 times, once in the script, once during the shoot, and once during the edit. In the cases of the 2 directors I just mentioned, they are writer, director, producers, who are in control of the edit too. In fact, Ridley Scott has even been known to do his own storyboards and art direction. He truly is the overseer of the production, and although he works with a huge team, the vision we're seeing is unmistakably his, therefore we can call him an auteur. There you have it, that's auteur theory in a nutshell. Essentially, if you can recognize the work of a director as theirs, then you could probably make a good argument that they're an auteur. Although going by that logic, you could probably say Michael Bay is an auteur, and I don't know how I feel about that. As always, thank you very much for watching, and if you found this at all useful, please do me a favor by leaving a like and subscribing, as it will really help my channel. If you're looking for where to go next, like I said, I've made a video on mise-en-scene, which you can watch here. Or if you're more interested in how to read cinematography, I've made a video on that, which you can read here. See you next time.